Hey, welcome to the first episode of Getting Fed with NutMed. So, to begin, cooking is a pretty versatile skill that can open up a lot of doorways for a lot of people. At first it seems like a pretty difficult route compared to everything else that's readily available to us, like takeout or having someone else cook for us, all that good stuff. Look at it this way. Cooking is a way to express yourself, to kind of put your passion into something that you want to share with others. Let's be honest, it's a pretty highly sought after skill that a lot of people look for in a partner. It can be used as an outlet, a hobby, which is why I really enjoy cooking. It is my outlet and it is my hobby. So, let us begin. So as they say, you got to break a couple eggs to make an omelet. All right, so today's episode we're going to basically be covering the kitchen essentials, the tools of the trade, the stuff that you're going to need to start your success. To begin with, we're going to look at the knife. So, the knives, don't really think about price, name, anything like that. Look for comfort, something that's comfortable in your hand. It feels natural. Think of it as an extension of yourself. It's not something to, be very overly cautious of, but you still want to express some form of caution when it comes to these guys because they can harm you pretty easily. So, I'm just going to demonstrate a proper grip, and then I'm also going to show you a little bit of improper grip. So to begin with, whenever we're looking at these guys, we want to hold them about like this, wrap your fingers around, and we're looking for smooth chopping motions, about like this. Think of a rocking boat, not too, stiff or anything like that. Let your wrist do the work for you. It should feel natural for the most part. An improper grip is going to be something about like this. Think serial killer for the most part. You're basically letting your arm do the most of the work for you. So, doing stuff like this, your arm's doing the work. You want your wrist to do the work for you. So smooth chopping motions, okay? All right. And next on our chopping block is going to be our knife's best friend, the cutting board. So to begin with these guys, we want to, have something that has a little bit more working room than this guy right here. He doesn't have a lot of space to work with. There's more chance for you to maybe hurt yourself, whatever it may be. Another thing to really look for is something with a grip. So this guy has a pro about him, but he's got a lot of cons. So look for something that has grip to it. We're looking more for a guy like this. Big, bulky, takes up a lot of space, but it gives you a lot of working room to kind of work with. So this one doesn't have grips. So a way to kind of combat that is get a paper towel. Get it wet a little bit, slide it right under, and it stops it from moving as much as it normally would. So if it's stationary in place, there's a less chance you're going to hurt yourself. If it's moving around a lot, chances are you could possibly cut a finger, maybe worse. All right? So on to our next guy though. We're going to have our pans. So let's not panic. All right. And the reason I say that, stainless steel. These guys are very easy to burn your food with. A lot of stuff sticks to them. So a lot of, your amateur cooks, people that are really kind of getting into it, they don't really like these guys, but they come in really big. They're pretty handy, I should say, actually, especially when it comes down to making a fond. We'll talk on that later. All right. Next on our list is the non-stick skillet pan. So these guys are pretty essential for a lot of people that are really getting into cooking because it's a lot harder for stuff to stick and burn. A lot of your newer stuff has a little red dot here in the center. Once it gets to a pretty deep dark red, that lets you know the pan's been heated up to a proper temperature, and that way you can start to use it at that point. And one last thing to look for in both of these guys is something that can withstand at least 400 degrees Fahrenheit, because a lot of times the stuff you may be cooking calls for you to throw it into the oven for a little bit. So make sure these guys can withstand some heat in that oven. All right. So those are pretty much our biggest essentials that we may need. Something that's a recommended item that we have is going to be stuff like a thermometer. So these guys right here are really essential for helping you cook stuff like, say, your meats. So your chicken, your pork, your beef, stuff like that. These guys right here, they're not the greatest. These are just the little probes you stick in. They take a little bit of time to read the temperature. So they're not the worst, but they're not the greatest. What we want to shoot for is something like a digital thermometer like this guy. Basically what this will do is it will read the temperature in about 4 seconds. That's what we're looking for, something with a read time of 4 seconds, maybe even less if possible. All right, next on our list, we're gonna look at our hot pads. These guys are pretty essential, otherwise you're gonna burn yourself if you don't have them. So these guys, they don't have grips on them. So looking for something that may have grips, maybe the mitts as well. That way you can have all fingers on it versus just kind of clamping it. So look for stuff like that. Be careful with these guys. If they're wet and you reach into a hot oven, chances are you may get a steam burn if you're not careful, okay? All right. So one of our next items that we're gonna look at is going to be pots. So we got pasta lovers out there. So these guys are pretty essential for those people. All right, so big or small, doesn't really matter, but you wanna make sure it's big enough to do the job that you need it for. So something like this, pretty good for pasta. Something like this, pretty good for making gravies and reductions and stuff like that. And depending on how much pasta you're making, maybe this guy will work. But you wanna make sure you have at least a good sized pot just to be safe, okay? All right. Next on our list, mixing bowls. So these guys really aren't too essential for the most part, but they are pretty important because if you're trying to mix stuff up, you kind of need something to put in there. So look for something that's pretty good size for the most part, and then kind of progressively get smaller from there. Not too much to really say about these guys. It's pretty standard for the most part. And last but not least is going to be a pepper mill. So you don't really need this guy, but if you feel like being extra sophisticated, go for this right here. It's gonna add a lot more flavor and depth to your cooking compared to like your store-bought pre-ground stuff. This is the fresh cracked pepper. That's what we want to shoot for. All right, thank you for joining me today. On our next episode, we're gonna kind of touch on, proper cutting techniques. So we'll bust this bad boy out again and our cutting board. We'll go over stuff like how to chop up an onion, how to dice an onion, how to julienne a pepper, stuff like that. So please join us next time. Thank you for watching. Cool.